أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Lesson number 124, Surah Yusuf, ayah number 36 to 57. وَدَخَلَ مَعَهُ السِّجْنَ فَتَيَانِ, and there entered the prison with him 2 young men. When Yusuf a.s., he was sent to the prison, along with him 2 young men were also sent. They entered the prison along with him. Fatayan is the dual, it's the tasniyah of the word fata. Fataya. And fata is used for a young man, as we learned earlier. Turawidu fataha. And as I mentioned to you earlier, that ghulam is a younger boy and fata is one who is older than him. Fata is from puberty to full manhood. Fata is from puberty to what age? Full manhood. And this word fata is also used for slaves. Just as the word ghulam is also used for slaves, this word is also used for slaves. Why? Because slaves of this age were preferred. Why do you think so? They're more active, right? They're more stronger. They don't have families to support. Isn't it so? They will take less holidays. Because when you have someone who is working for you and they're older, it'll be more difficult to command them, to instruct them. They might disagree with you. They might not listen to you. They might request for breaks, etc., etc. But a younger person, he's more active. And this also shows to us that the best age of serving people is what age? When you're young. And you can say that this age is about from ghulam all the way to the completion of fata. It's from early teens all the way up to almost the age of 30, a little bit beyond that. So until the age of ashud. So when a person is young, he has more physical ability. This is the best time to serve people. Remember, this is not the best time to get served. Unfortunately, that's what many of us want. That we should be given our breakfast and our laundry should be done for us and we should be driven around everywhere. This is the time to serve people. This is the time to serve your parents. To serve your grandparents. Not when you become old and you're busy with your children, then you don't have any energy left, nor do you have any time. That's not the best time. The best time is when? Your teens. That's the best time. So 2 young men, they also entered the prison with Yusuf a.s. It is said that these 2 men were the servants of the king. Who were they? Servants of the king of Egypt. Remember that the Aziz, he was not the king. The Aziz was who? The finance minister. And the Malik, he was the king. Some say that the king was the Pharaoh, Fir'aun as well, of that time. However, the word Fir'aun has not been used for that king. It hasn't been used for that king. Allahu A'lam, perhaps the title Fir'aun came about later. And these 2 people, these 2 men, one is said to be the Saqi, meaning the chief cupbearer of the king, the one who would serve water to the king. The chief cupbearer, the one who would bear the cup of the king to serve him water. And the other was the chief baker, the one who would prepare his food and serve food to the king. So it wasn't just one person who would serve the food to the king. One would bring his cup and the other would bring his food. And these 2 men, they were accused of having attempted to kill the king. It is said that they offered poisoned food to him. And it was discovered, and because of that, both of them, they were sent to prison. There have been various opinions with regards to what exactly happened with these 2 men. According to some, what happened was that there were some people who wished to kill the king. And just as any person who is in such a high authority, if people want to kill that person, who do they approach? Their private servants, right? So similarly, the people, they approached the private servants of the king. And the cupbearer, he did not agree. But the baker, he agreed. So what they did was that the baker, he brought food that was poisoned. And the cupbearer also brought water, but it wasn't poisoned. Now, as soon as the food was served to the king, the cupbearer, he said, don't eat this food, it's poisoned. When the baker heard that, he said, no, this water that he has brought to you, that is poisoned. So now the king was like, okay, who's lying? Who's speaking the truth? So both of them were sent to the jail. And then later on it was discovered that when the water was fed to perhaps an animal, that animal survived, and when that food was fed, that animal passed away. Allahu A'lam what exactly happened. But it was later discovered that who was at fault? The baker, and not the cupbearer. But the cupbearer was also accused, which is why both of them were sent to the jail along with Yusuf alayhi salam. They entered at the same time. قَالَ أَحَدُهُمَا. One of them said, one of these two men who entered with Yusuf alayhi salam, they said to who? Yusuf alayhi salam, that inni arani, indeed I saw myself, a'asiru khamra, that I am pressing wine. A'asiru is from the root letters ayn sad ra. Asara, ya'asiru, which is to press, to squeeze juice out of something. For example, fruit. Similarly, it is also used for pressing or squeezing clothes in order to drench the water out of them. From the same root is the word asr, which is used for time. Wal asr, right? Asr is what? Time. Because as time goes by, what happens? People are squeezed out of their energy, right? Out of their moisture even. Their skin begins to wrinkle. Their abilities begin to deteriorate. So as time goes by, people are squeezed out of their energies. And also if you look at it, once a fruit has been squeezed and juice has been extracted out of it, it appears to be old and wrinkled. So he said that I saw myself, meaning in my dream, I saw a dream and I saw myself that I am pressing khamran, wine. Khamr is used for wine, but in particular it is used for such wine that is made from grapes. So he said that I saw myself pressing grapes for making wine. In my dream I saw that I am pressing grapes for making wine. وَقَالَ الْآخَرُ, and the other man said that inni arani, indeed I saw myself in my dream, that ahmilu, I am carrying, from the root letters ha mim lam, haml, that I am carrying fawqa ra'si, above my head, khubzan, bread. Khubz is bread. Kha ba zai. This word I'm sure you're familiar with, right? So I saw myself carrying bread upon my head. And this bread, تَأْكُلُ الطَّيْرُ مِنْهُ, birds are eating out of it. I have bread on top of my head, and birds, they're coming and eating off that bread. So these men say that نَبِئْنَا, inform us بِتَأْوِيلِهِ, with its interpretation. Tell us about the interpretation of these dreams of ours. إِنَّا نَرَاكَ, indeed we see you, مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, of those who do ihsan. It is said that when these two men, when they entered the prison, they saw Yusuf alayhi salam, they noticed him, they sensed his good behavior, and they could figure out that he was not an ordinary person. He was knowledgeable. And because of that, these dreams, these strange dreams they had, they went and asked him. Just like if a person has a strange dream, who will he ask? Someone whom he considers to be knowledgeable. So similarly, these men also, they went up to him and they asked him about the interpretation of their dreams. And look at what they say to him, that إِنَّا نَرَاكَ مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, we see you of those people who do ihsan. These two people, they give him the title of a muhsin. Whereas if you look at it, Yusuf a.s. was living where now? In a prison. And he was sent to the prison out of injustice. It wasn't his fault. And living in a prison is not easy. It's like, a prison is like a graveyard for who? For the living. And just as when you go to a graveyard, it's extremely depressing. Similarly, when you go to a prison, it's extremely depressing. Imprisonment, it makes you miserable. It makes you frustrated. It makes you sad and angry and depressed. Because a prison is a place where people are physically confined. Physically they're confined, either to their cell, or to a limited area, or to a building, or to a particular floor. There's guardrails everywhere. People are physically confined. And they're also deprived of various personal freedoms. For example, if a person wishes to go from his room to the washroom, he will not be allowed to go. He has to defecate in his cell. He has to stay over there. He's physically confined. If he wants to go meet his family, he cannot go. If he wants to go to the mall, he cannot go. He is physically confined and deprived of many personal freedoms. And if you look at it, some prison cells, they're very small, extremely small, where a person has to sleep and he has to eat and he has to use the bathroom and everything else over there. And the only time that he comes out is, for what purpose? Perhaps for some torture, for some interrogation, for a court hearing, or perhaps for some hard labor. So you can imagine that living in a prison is extremely difficult. And remember the prisons of the past. Dungeons were very common. Where there is dark, there is no sunlight, no fresh air, people are confined, and people are also physically tortured. Now just imagine a person is living in these circumstances. Just put yourself in a situation like this, where you are physically confined, your freedom is limited, you're not allowed to make choices, and in that situation, somebody calls you a muhsin. People are calling him who? A muhsin. Many times it happens with people that they are in situations where they become confined. Other people force things upon them, and they feel that their life is limited, it's constricted. Like a typical example could be a woman, she gets married, and she thinks at the time of marriage, now I'm going to be free. And she ends up in the house of who? Her in-laws. Where, if she wants to go somewhere, she has to ask everyone. If she wishes to do something, she's not given the permission. If she wants to cook, she's not allowed. If she wants to put things a certain way, she's not allowed. If she wants to invite people over, she's not allowed. If she wants to go somewhere, there's a list of house chores. So she feels as if she is also imprisoned. She does not have the choice. Or for example, she has a child. She has many children. And because of that, her life feels like as though she's living in a jail cell. Because going out of the house becomes very difficult. Inviting people also becomes very difficult. Similarly, there could be a person who is living in a hostel. And in that hostel, there are certain rules that they have to follow. If they want to call at a particular time, they cannot call. If they want to use a computer at a particular time, they cannot use that. If they want to go out with their friends, have some friends over, they cannot do that. It happens in life with many people in different situations. Similarly, when you go to school, there are certain rules that you have to follow. There are certain times in which you have to be in class. If you want to go eat, you cannot go eat. If you want to go talk to your friends, you cannot go talk. If you want to talk on the phone, you can't do that. You have to be in the class. And in these situations, we think that we are so unfortunate. And because of that, we think that we have the permission to behave however we want. We can yell at people, we can shout at them, because it's their fault, they're being unjust. So what do we blame? Circumstances. For what? Our wrong behavior. But Yusuf a.s. does not blame his circumstances for his wrong behavior. No, he does not have any wrong behavior. Just imagine, the prison inmates are calling him a muhsin, someone who is very nice. How is it possible for someone to be a muhsin in a prison? It's something that is unimaginable. It's something that is difficult to comprehend. Sometimes we blame the weather. It says very dark today. It's still so cold. Or I'm not feeling well. Women in particular, they have an excuse every month for their bad behavior, for their moodiness. I'm being very snappy, I'm being very moody because of this and this reason. I'm cramping and so on and so forth. All the time we blame people, we blame circumstances, we blame the weather, we blame the time of the month. For what? Our bad behavior. But again, this is not an excuse. This is not an excuse. Because Yusuf a.s., he is a muhsin in the prison. إِنَّا لَنَرَاكَ مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. It is true that our circumstances, they do affect us. We're not saying over here that they don't affect us. Of course they affect us. But just because they affect us does not mean we can behave however we want. We have to control ourselves. We must control ourselves. And we must always remember the situation that Yusuf a.s. went through. Definitely his situation was much more difficult. It was much more difficult. So we need to see as well that are we a muhsin in our house, at our in-laws, at the hostel, at the workplace? How do people perceive us? Are we approachable? Or do they think many times before talking to us? That she's going to yell at me, she's going to snap at me, she's going to give me that look. She's going to start again. What is our behavior? What is our reputation rather? How do people perceive us? Is it that of a muhsin or something else? We have to see that are we a muhsin in the eyes of people who live with us, or are we someone who is a source of negativity? Someone who is a source of tension? Someone who is a source of discomfort? When other people come in, when they see us, are they uncomfortable? Or do they become relaxed? What kind of feelings are we spreading around ourselves? If Yusuf alayhi salam was a muhsin in that situation, then what is our state? What is our behavior? You see, it's all about the perspective. Yusuf alayhi salam accepted it as a decree of Allah. And he took that prison to be a means of saving himself from a greater harm. Similarly, if we take every difficult situation positively, then our behavior will be completely different. If we consider difficulties to be learning experiences, then we will look at them completely differently. If, for example, we are confined in a hostel, in a house, at the in-laws' place, and we take it as a learning experience that Allah is teaching me something over here. Allah is teaching me something over here. That perhaps I love, household things. I love things that are of this world, and perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to take that love out of my heart. This is why He's put me in this situation. Because every girl, what does she dream of? Her own house. Right? That she's going to set it up this way, she's going to do this, and then she's going to have a party, and then she's going to have this dinner set out, and she's going to arrange it this way. Every girl has this. She has these kind of dreams, these wishes. But if she's put in a situation where she doesn't have any freedom, then she should look at that positively. Maybe Allah does not want me to waste my time on these things. Maybe Allah wants me to do something that is different. There's some wisdom behind it. If you take it as a learning experience, as a learning opportunity, your approach will be completely different. So the test is our patience. That what do we do? How do we behave? And sometimes we are extremely patient for a long time, and then finally, we burst. We're like, that's it. What is the test? That we have to be patient all the way till the end. Sometimes women don't say anything for many years until eventually they erupt and they start yelling. And then that yelling does not stop. Qala, he said. Yusuf a.s. he responds to them. And he says, La ya'tikuma, it will not come to you two. What will not come to you? Ta'amun, food. Which food? Turzaqanihi, that both of you are provided. Before your food comes to you, إِلَّا نَبَأْتُكُمَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَأْتِيكُمَا. I will inform you about the interpretation of your dreams. Before your food comes to you, I will tell you about the interpretation of your dreams. If you notice over here, he says, طَعَامٌ تُرْزَقَانِهِ, food that you are provided with. It's not that you have to go and make your own food and cook it and prepare it yourself and then eat that food. No. Look at you. You're so comfortable. You're sitting over here and food is brought to you. Some say it was brought to them by their own family members because that was the rule at that time. And others say that no, it was brought to them by who? By the prison guards. So he says that before your food comes, I will tell you about the interpretation of your dream. So he reminds them of a favor over here that is done to them. And this is how a person must be in difficult situations, that he should look at the positive side of everything. You should look at the positive side of everything. For example, if a woman is living with her in-laws and she's not allowed to cook in the kitchen, she should take it as a very good thing. Alhamdulillah, I don't have to cook. I only have to do the dishes. It's a blessing in disguise. Just imagine if she had to cook for so long. But what is the general complaint? No, I want to cook myself. I'm a young girl. When will I learn? But the fact is that if you cannot cook right now, do something else. Take it as a blessing. So he reminds them of this blessing. This food is brought to you. So we should focus on the positives in every situation. And I would inform you before the food comes to you. Why does he say this to them? That I will inform you of the interpretation before the food comes to you? Because he wished to convey the message of Tawheed to them as well. He wished to do some da'wah to them. And he wanted to do da'wah at this point when they asked him about the interpretation of their dreams. Why? Because when a person asks you a question, he is more receptive at that point. Isn't it? He's more interested at that point. So he wanted to seize this opportunity. He wanted to avail this opportunity. And he wanted to tell them about Tawheed at this point. And it would be inappropriate for him to start talking about Tawheed, whereas these people are talking to him, asking him about what? About their dreams. So he says that I will tell you about the interpretation of the dream. But before that, let me just tell you one thing. Just hear me. Just listen to me. Just listen to one thing that I have to say to you. And it'll be short. It won't be too long. Just within a few minutes, by the time your food comes, I will tell you what I have to say, and I will also tell you about the interpretation of your dream. What do we learn over here? Very good akhlaq. Very good behavior. That when they're asking him about one thing, he doesn't go on telling them other things. He tells them how long the answer is going to be, how long they will have to wait. And it's a part of being courteous. It's a part of being professional. That you tell the other person how long it will be, what you will tell them, what you will talk to them about. So, إِلَّا نَبَأْتُكُمَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَأْتِيَكُمَا. And he says, ذَلِكُمَا, that owe you to. So firstly he says, remember that this knowledge that you're asking me about, the interpretation of the dream, this is mimma, from that which allamani Rabbi, my Lord has taught me. So he says to them that firstly, remember that what I'm going to tell you is not my own achievement. I am going to tell you the interpretation of your dream based on what? The knowledge that Allah has given me. So in other words, he's telling them, I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not someone who knows the unseen. I'm not a soothsayer. I'm just a human being. And my Lord has given me this knowledge. And I'm telling you about the interpretation based on that knowledge. Because generally when people are asked such questions, interpretation of dreams, what's going to happen? What do people generally think about such people? That they have some knowledge of the unseen, that they have some ability, they know, they're up there. But he tells them, this knowledge is based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught me. It's not my own achievement. It's not my personal knowledge. Allah has taught it to me. And he also says this to tell them that what I'm telling you is from Allah. So it is free from any error. It is free from any error. And by saying this, ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي, in other words, he is acknowledging the favor of Allah upon him. What is he doing? He is acknowledging the favor of Allah upon him. That this is not my own achievement. It's the blessing of Allah. Which is why the people of Jannah, when they will enter Jannah in Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 43, what do we learn? That they will say, Alhamdulillahi alladhi hadana lihada, وَمَا كُنَّا لِنَهْتَدِيَ لَوْلَا أَنْ هَدَانَ اللَّهِ. This is the blessing of Allah. We could never have done this ourselves. So he is making this clear to them. Secondly, he says that إِنِّي تَرَكْتُ مِلَّةَ قَوْمٍ, I have left the creed of a people. Which people? لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ, who do not believe in Allah, وَهُمْ بِالْآخِرَةِ, and they in the hereafter, هُمْ كَافِرُونَ, they are disbelievers. Secondly, know that my religion is that of Tawheed. I have left the religion of people who don't believe in Allah or the last day. I am not associated with them. I have nothing to do with them. I have no relationship with them. Taraktu is from the root letters tarakaf. And tark is to leave something, to abandon something. Sometimes it is used for leaving something that a person is engaged in, and sometimes it is used for having no relationship with something. So over here, he does not mean that I was upon their religion and now I have left it. No, Yusuf a.s. was a Muslim from the beginning. What he's saying over here is that I have nothing to do with it. I have no relation with them. So over here, he tells them about his iman, about his faith. And he emphasizes on two main aspects of belief. What are they? What are they? Belief in Allah and the hereafter. And when you're doing da'wah, many times you don't have a lot of time to talk about everything. So what should you emphasize on? These two main principles, these two main beliefs, belief in Allah as well as the last day. So we see that the people of Egypt, they were idol worshippers. They were mushrikeen. And he clarifies to them, these two men, that I do not follow the religion of the people of Egypt. I am not a mushrik like them. So indirectly he was saying that this entire nation is following one way. And what is that way? Of shirk. But I am following the way of Tawheed. I am only one person, and the rest of them, they have their own religion. Now when you present yourself like that I am alone in what I am doing, I am the only one who is doing this, everybody else is doing something different, people might not trust you. Isn't it? People might not trust you. But if you tell them that no, there are other people as well who are doing the same thing as I am doing, then what happens? It adds weight to your statement. Like for example, if you tell someone about a particular field of study that you're doing. You go to a particular college. It's a no-name college, nobody's heard about it. So when you tell people, they're like, oh, where is it? I've never heard of that school. What program is it? Really? It's been there for so long, I never knew about it. So you tell them that, no, even this person has studied from that college. Even this person has studied from that college. I'm not the only one. When you say that other people have also done the same thing as you, it adds weight to your statement. This is why Yusuf a.s. says that وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَائِي. And instead, I follow the religion of who? My forefathers. I'm not the only one who is upon Tawheed. You see me as one person on Tawheed and the rest of the nation on Shirk. But I'm not the only one who is doing this. Before me, there were people who were also on the religion of Tawheed. So I am following the religion of who? My forefathers, Ibrahim, wa Ishaq, wa Yaqub. And all of them were who? Prophets. And the fact that he mentions their names, it shows that these prophets of Allah were perhaps well known at that time. Because he mentions them by name, Ibrahim, Ishaq, Yaqub. So what does it show? That perhaps they were well known at this time. Perhaps the people of Egypt were also aware of them. They must have heard about them. Like for example, if today you tell someone about the Prophet ﷺ, even if the majority of people are not Muslim, haven't they heard about him? They have. So it's also possible that the people of Egypt had heard about these prophets of Allah. And he says to them that مَا كَانَ لَنَا, it is not permissible for us, it is not correct for us, أَن نُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ, that we associate partners with Allah, مِن شَيْءٍ, from anything. It is not allowed for us that we associate any partner at all with Allah. It does not suit us to do that. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only God. And ذَلِكَ, that is, what does ذَلِكَ refer to? Tawheed, this religion of Tawheed, and the ability to observe this religion. This is min fadlillahi alayna. This is of the bounty of Allah upon us. This guidance is a huge favor of Allah upon us. It's not our own achievement. It's the favor of who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it's not a favor just upon me and my predecessors, but rather it is a favor upon who else? وَعَلَى النَّاسِ, and also upon the rest of the people. Meaning this religion is not just for us, but it is a universal message. It's a message for everyone. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ But most of the people لَا يَشْكُرُونَ They are not grateful. Not grateful for what? For this blessing of religion, which is why they don't observe it. We see over here that Yusuf a.s., he mentions his forefathers, and he mentions his religion. And he says that it would not be permissible for us to associate partners with Allah. And the religion that we are upon, this is a huge favor of Allah. The question is he praising himself over here? Is this self-projection? Like, for example, you're talking to someone, you tell them about the particular college you're going to, you tell them about what you're studying, you tell them about your family. I'm becoming a doctor, my father was also a doctor, my grandfather was also a doctor. And his father was also a doctor. Is it self-projection? It could be if a person is doing it in order to gain fame. But it's not self-projection when a person is trying to explain to the other that what I'm doing is not something new. What I'm doing is not something strange. This has been the norm amongst the people of the past. So it's okay for a person to say something like this when he wishes to add weight to his statement, when he wishes to add weight to his claim. This is the reason why he's saying this. Now, look at the way that he is doing da'wah. Look at his method of tabligh. He uses a lot of wisdom. He doesn't just tell them what you're doing is wrong. By the way, you shouldn't be doing shirk. Let me tell you about the interpretation, but what you're doing is shirk and zulmun azim. It's going to lead you to hellfire. Look at the way he's approaching them. That firstly know that I am telling you this interpretation based on the knowledge that Allah has given me. Secondly, my religion is that of Tawheed, which is a huge favor from Allah. So when you're telling someone about their religion, when you're doing da'wah, there are some important rules that we must observe. What are they? Very important rules. What do we learn from these ayat? Very important rules that we must observe when we are doing da'wah. First of all, tell the other person who you are. Introduce yourself a little bit. Because he's telling them about his forefathers. He's telling them about who he is, where he's come from. He's telling them about his religion, what he does, what he practices. Because unless you introduce yourself to the other person will not be able to relate with you. He will be constantly wondering, who is she? Who is he? Why is she talking to me? Because sometimes we just walk out of nowhere in front of the other person and we start talking to them. Introduce yourself a little bit. Tell them who you are. Similarly, if you're telling someone about the Quran, tell them that you are studying the Quran. You can introduce yourself. And remember, you're not doing this to show off. You're doing this why? To add weight to your statement, to add credibility. This is the reason why he's saying this. Another very important thing that we learn from this is that when you mention something, when you narrate something, when you inform of something, make sure you tell the other person about the reference as well. Talk about the references. Like, for example, if you're doing da'wah, and you just randomly say that, by the way, the Prophet ﷺ is considered to be the most successful person in history, what's your reference behind that? What's your evidence behind that? Have some research with you. Have the name of some book with you, the name of some author, the name of some, something or the other, with which you can show your credibility that what you're saying is true. Have some evidence. Because over here, what does Yusuf a.s. say? That what I'm saying to you is not something new. This is what my forefathers were also practicing. And this is the reason why it has been the tradition of the Muslim scholars that whenever they would narrate the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, what would they do? They would always mention the chain of narration as well. That I heard from so-and-so, who heard from so-and-so, all the way up to the Prophet ﷺ. This was always the tradition until the ahadith were recorded in books. And now what do? We just quote the name of the book and that's sufficient. So always give reference. Because when you give a strong reference, then what you're saying becomes more effective. It becomes more weighty. It becomes more acceptable to the other.